Our latest edition of My Faith, Homer and Tom Pippins, Tommy Pippins, but with Stan Johnson, former Marquette assistant, now the head coach at Loyola Marymount. I didn't know if Pip was ready for him. I'm used to him. I'm ready. Coach, this is a simple show. And that is everybody, even when they're not famous like you, just tells us their faith. Where it started, yours, everybody knows who follows you and knows you on Twitter, is so strong. So take us back to the start. And good afternoon, of course.
Well, good to see you. I feel like I'm back in Milwaukee again. That's always a good thing. Miss the familiar faces. And what a great show. You know, for me, I mean, my faith is ongoing. That's number one. And where that started from, I grew up in the church. My family was always deep rooted in that. My parents, you know, we grew up in a Baptist church, even when I was in Liberia, West Africa. And as a young kid, I don't know if there was a Sunday where we missed church. And that came from my grandparents, especially on my father's side, who had the strongest faith of maybe anyone I've ever been around, especially my grandmother. And it's funny, Homer, I even to this day, I always say, I'm not worthy of anything I've received in life. And there's no doubt, because of my grandmother's faith and her being such a prayer warrior. You know, she's no longer with us, but that's what we called her. She was a prayer warrior. And because of her faith, her relationship with God, there is no doubt the rest of her family has benefited off that. And God has kind of put his covering over her people, her family, because of her. And our faith really stems from her. I was probably, 10 years old when I moved because of a war from Liberia, West Africa, where we were really protected. I mean, there was a war that came in and this rebel group came in to take over the government by the grace of God, because my mom was an American citizen. Our family was able to be evacuated out of there. We lost absolutely everything. Came to America, started life all over. For a short stint before we moved to Salt Lake, we lived in Tulsa, Oklahoma. All my uncles, I'm trying to think, every single one of my uncles is a pastor. All of them. And we lived with one of them in Salt Lake, in Tulsa, as we were transitioning. And I remember it was actually I went with him to a supermarket one day to go grocery shopping, and we were sitting in his car in the supermarket. I could still remember. And that was where I actually accepted Christ into my life. You know, finally, made that verbal agreement and acceptance, and it was with him. And it was in a parking lot in Tulsa, Oklahoma, at a grocery store, where, we had that. And ever since then, I've obviously, God has been in control of my life. And after I've accepted him, we've had that relationship. And like everybody says, the one thing about faith, and sometimes acknowledging your faith, is there's a tendency to think, well, you believe in God, you should be perfect. And I can also sit here and tell you I'm the furthest thing from that. And I'm a work in progress. But I always have that to go back to and center me. And that doesn't mean I haven't made mistakes in my life. It doesn't mean that we are perfect people. And even when we talk about it, I think sometimes when you talk about your faith, there's a tendency, like I said, for people to say, well, you did this, or you've done that, or it doesn't make you a perfect person, because we're imperfect, because we can't live up to the standard. That's why that relationship with God is so important, and accepting him, because like the Bible says, right, the blood he shed for us, covers our sins. But I can tell you, I grew up with that faith. It was ingrained in me at a young age. I've seen what it's done in my life. I've had parts of my life where sometimes you kind of move away from it because you're distracted and you're not in the Word as much. Sometimes you're closer, and that's what I'm saying. It's a continual work, and I'm nowhere where I certainly want to be and hope to be. But I do hope that when people do see something or do see me, they can feel something of that coming out. And that's kind of my gauge and how I check myself. And I always go, hey, if someone didn't know you and you didn't profess that, would they be able to say that about you? And if we're being completely honest, there's a lot of times where the answer to that is no. And that's where you have to be able to check yourself and get recentered again.
Let's go back to your grandmother. When did you realize, at what age, how special she was and the impact her prayer was having on your family's life, as you just stated?
You know, I probably didn't truly understand that till probably I was in, probably a high school kid, because she ended up living with us for quite a bit in high school. And I would just see how much time she would spend with God, how much time she spent with God in prayer, how much time she spent reading, how much time she spent praising him, how committed she was. And you would start to see things happen in your life and you're going, and again, just because you have faith or you accept God, that doesn't mean everything in your life can be perfect. It's not, well, I did this, so now I'm going to get this. But I do remember going, man, I know it's not me what I'm doing. And there's no doubt it's her. And because of her relationship, God is blessing her family and has his hand over her family. So I would definitely say high school, it began to really resonate with me, her relationship with God and how impactful that was, not only for her, but for all of us.
I always like to ask, there's an age where you decide, you've had it in your families, but there's a point where you have to say it. You mentioned in Tulsa, but I'm guessing something happened before that where you bought in without anybody being around or without any input from your family. At some day, it is your decision.
Yeah, and I think, again, I think I was probably closer to probably 11 at that time when I made that commitment. That was really on me. Obviously, I grew up in the church. I believed at an early age. That's what I knew. It's who we were. That's what my family stood for. But that day was the day that I made that decision to proclaim that. And that's what it says in the Bible, to confess with your mouth. And that's what I did on that day, at probably around 11 years old.
You mentioned many pastors. I think you could have been a pretty good pastor. Did it ever cross your mind? And if you want to give us your best 10 minutes right now, Pastor Johnson, take it away.
Yeah, no, my parents used to joke with me, and even my family, and say, yeah, you know what, you're going to be that. And I certainly am not capable of being that. And I'm certainly not even worthy of being that, and I've said, God has given me my calling, and even in what I'm doing now as a coach, I hope the greatest legacy that somebody will say is that through him, we heard about God or Christ in one way or the other. And there's a way to do that without being overbearing. And there's a way to do that, really by living your life. Sometimes opinions and words are good, but actions are what change things. And I hope over time people will say, his actions reflected what it is to be a follower of Christ. And again, that's not saying why he's a perfect person or didn't make mistakes. No, he did make mistakes. He did grow from those mistakes. He became a better person. And that's what it's about. I mean, you look in the Bible and you study some of the people God used to spread his message, to spread his word. They weren't all saints. And that's what I want people to get from this. And I think a lot of times the more I talk to people, that tends to be the roadblock. It's, I'm not perfect. I've fallen short. I make mistakes. I do this, I do that. God wants those people. And it's like going to the hospital. You don't go to the hospital because you're healthy. You go to the hospital because, there's something that's probably wrong with you that you need fixing. And that's what God is. That's what the church is. We're not there because we're perfect people. We're there because we are sick, and we're all sick. and he is the healer, and he is the one and only person that can get you to where you need to be in your life. So um, I hope people will see that. I hope people see the good, the bad, the ugly, and ultimately what you become. But I think even till your last breath, you're always becoming. You're always trying to get closer to God. You're always trying to be better, and that's certainly something that I'm trying to do on a daily basis.
I claim everybody's relationship with God is different. How would you best describe your relationship with God to someone else?
Yeah, I think if I'm a pretty honest person, if I'm being completely honest, I think I've gone, I've had times in my life where it's almost, we see God as someone who's there to help us get what we want, right? And we're always praying for the things that we need. And I have phases of that. And hopefully I'm transitioning to another phase of being thankful for what I have, and talking to God in a different way. Not, oh man, please help my dreams come true. Instead of having that, it's more, thank you for what all you've given to me. How, use me in the way I need to be used. Because again, He knows um, far better what's more important for me than I do, and I continue to challenge myself to not make it about me and I, but what is it that He wants me to ultimately be, and what I should ultimately become. And that's a tug of war, and that's not easy. And you know, the forces of life, especially in this world, the closer you become to God, it's not like, Satan and just says, okay, well, we're going to let him go. You're always under attack, right? And you're always under attack. So my relation with God, for example, I wake up every morning now at 6 o'clock. The first thing I do is I read the Bible, because I know if I don't do that, and as the day goes on, that's not going to happen. And I've had stretches, I've had months where I've gone and I haven't opened the Bible, right? And again, how can you get better? And are you opening it up just to check the box, or are you truly trying to learn and get something from it? So I would say, again, to my relationship with God is, it's ongoing. It's refining. It's a step backwards, 2 step forwards. And, but without a shadow of a doubt, I do realize that nothing in my life that I have now, the health that I have, my ability to have breath to talk to you right now, none of that is possible without God. I know that without a fact.
You're an assistant with Marquette, and everybody there is thankful that you helped bring Marcus Howard. I speak for them, thank you. And now you're head coach at Loyola Marymount. Basketball, to me, what I know of is your life. How does your faith fit in? What can you do and not do to have, one, the players be aware of this being a very important part of you, and have some influence? Because I know that's something you would love to do.
Yeah, again, I think it's it's how you live, it's how you carry yourself. I think that's going to be far more important than anything you say or you can tell somebody. It's, hopefully living in a way where somebody comes up to you someday and says, well, why do you do that? Like, why didn't you get mad in that instant? How can you have so much faith? Why are you not as fearful? Where all of a sudden now those doors open for a greater conversation. Even within our locker room and before we go into games, having a time of prayer. One thing I want to establish here before our games, especially we'll do it on the road and in the games, but having, a few hours before the game, a chapel where guys can come in and we can talk about faith and God and all those things. And we're incorporating that in with what we're doing in terms of basketball. And that's a creative way to do that. And some kids are going to come in and want to do it. Some aren't, where it's not forced. But again, the more you can get and the more people you can get in that group, all of a sudden now that opens the doors to maybe some other guys. But that's how I'm using it. And I think it's how you coach and that's how you teach. Beyond doing those things, it's how you treat people. Are you treating them with respect? Am I treating the guys on our basketball team the way I would treat my own kids. That's godly. And I tell all the recruits and their parents at the end of this thing, especially in recruiting, at the end of my life, I know God's going to judge me like he's going to judge everybody else. But he's also going to ask me, well, what did you do with the lives of the players that you came in contact with? How did you help develop them? And I'm going to be held accountable to that. I know that. Not only for the way my actions and what I did, but what I did for other people. So that's a very serious thing. And, I do take that serious. And I hope that the people who have had interactions with me, I hope I've led them closer to Christ. And if I haven't, then, I apologize for that too, because that's a mistake.
I know you're busy. I only have one last question, though it's two parts. When do you feel furthest from God, and when do you feel the closest to God?
I feel the furthest, obviously, when I'm trying to take things in my own hands, when I'm trying to play that role, when I'm trying to be in charge of my life, when I'm trying to be in charge of my career, when I'm in charge of decisions, when I'm, falling prey to whatever temptation that presents itself, and we all fall short to different ones. That's when I'm farthest, because in those moments I'm not in the Word, I'm not reading, I'm not studying, I'm not in prayer. And anytime you're not in those things, you're going to float away. And when I'm closest to Him, and when I feel our relationship is strongest, is when I'm investing and I'm taking time away from all the worldly things, and making that the priority. And that's why, I've moved to trying to do that at 6 a.m. and starting my days that way. So I'm in the right frame of mind, so that's certainly when I'm drifting, I'm not investing the time needed. I'm hoping it happens rather than being intentional about it.
I would tell others, I'm curious to your response, that everybody should follow you on Twitter, as they'll learn better about you and the importance of your faith. And you'll also get my response to some of Coach Johnson's tweets. My general complaint is that they're fabulous, but a little long. So,
yeah, well, you know what? We all need an accountability partner, whether it's our faith, or you want to lose weight, or you want to, whatever it is. Everybody needs an accountability partner. You are my Twitter accountability partner. You like shorter words, but what's funny to me, I read your Twitter, and your actions or your words don't always match your actions, because yours can be a little lengthy too.
Legitimately stated. Thanks for your time. And I know for all the people at Marquette, wishing you good luck. They miss you and expect great things. And again, go on Twitter. But I hope this isn't the last time we talk, but thanks for, I look forward to your next time somewhere down the road when you say you have become a pastor, but that's probably a few years off. Thanks, Coach.
That may be in another lifetime, and this is not going to be the last time we talk. You have skipped me on our tennis match. I will return to Milwaukee for a match of tennis and golf. So you will see me again.
Thank you. Thanks
All
again.
Right, thanks, guys. Bye.
Marquette, former Marquette assistant, now the head coach at Loyola Marymount, Stan Johnson. And again, go to YouTube and then search My Faith with Homer and Pip, and you'll get this one and some of the others that we've done. And Tommy will be back next week, and want to thank him for allowing me to go one-on-one with Stan Johnson. He'd like that on the golf course and also on the tennis court. It will never happen on the basketball court. Thanks, Coach.
See you guys. Bye.